The idea of geoengineering is large-scale manipulation of the climate in order to offset warming, global warming, in order to offset the buildup of CO2 in the atmosphere. There's basically two ways of doing that. One is to build a mechanical device that sucks CO2 out of the atmosphere, essentially an artificial tree. And there are people doing that, and I'll talk about a little bit about that, but not much. That's a pretty safe and simple, straightforward thing. But the dangerous and interesting thing that I want to talk about tonight is reflecting sunlight away from the planet in order to offset the warming that we're seeing because of the increasing CO2 in the atmosphere, carbon in the atmosphere. And that is a very interesting and dangerous device. It's essentially like putting up a parasol for the planet. There's various ways of doing that, including putting particles in the stratosphere that would act as mirrors, or as Walter mentioned, that Armin Nukermans, who many of you may know, has been working on cloud brightening, creating marine clouds over the ocean, low-lying clouds over the ocean that would help reflect away sunlight. There's various ways of doing this. And that's what I really want to talk about tonight, because it's the really fascinating, dangerous, and powerful technology that I think we all need to think about. And I want to say one other thing before I launch in, which is that, as I'm sure everyone here knows, global warming is a problem that is caused by too much CO2, greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. The way to deal with this, to fix this, if we were all rational and together, would be to stop putting CO2 in the atmosphere. But we seem to not be able to do that. So because we're not able to do that, we need to think about other ways of handling this problem. And that's how we get to geoengineering. So I want to start by setting the stage a little bit with two images. And one is this one. And this is New York after Hurricane Sandy, where all of lower Manhattan is blacked out, and we see the impact of this storm. And I would argue that Hurricane Sandy was the turning point in how we think about dealing with climate and global warming. Obviously, we had a year this year with a lot of heat records broken, extreme weather, wildfires, all kinds of things. But Sandy was sort of the coup de grace for the year, and everyone, I think that polling has showed everything, that the debate has really changed, that people understand that climate change is not some weird thing that happens in computer modelers at Stanford, or, that it's actually here and now, that we're seeing the effects of it already. Scientists have, of course, been telling us that for a long time. But people are seeing it with their own eyes now. They're seeing spring coming later. They're seeing, more intense rainfalls, storms, all these kinds of things. And Sandy really galvanized that, I think, broadly for America in a very profound way. But I want to point out the reaction to it. So what happened after Sandy? It wasn't like President Obama and others were out all of a sudden calling for a carbon tax and saying, okay, we have to get serious about cutting emissions, and we're launching a global campaign to deal with this finally because we realize it's real and it's happening. No, that's not what's happened, right? What's happened is they're talking about building barriers in New York now, storm barriers to keep the storm out. They're talking about, Governor Christie in New Jersey is talking about building essentially steel reinforced sand dunes along the coast to keep the sea out. We've shifted in some way to adaptation as the way that we're dealing with this strategy, dealing with climate change. It's a much easier conversation to have. Of course, politically, you don't have to worry about, is this real? What's causing these storms? What's that? We just need to protect them. And of course, there's lots of great contracts to give out to favored contractors and things like that to build all of this stuff. But adaptation has sort of become the name of the game now, I think, in thinking about the strategies of dealing with climate, unfortunately.